The objective of this activity that we carry out was to put into practice the knowledge acquired during the course. In this case, we have to make a car, and the objective was to advance 5 meters and calculate different positions with their respective times. That will later help us to get the following physical magnitudes. That is velocity, acceleration, force, kinetic energy, change in kinetic energy, momentum, impulse, and change in momentum. Another objective that we were able to analyze are the movements of the bodies. In this case, the body was the car.
Development. To assemble it, first we cut a cardboard rectangle to which we glued the 2 straws at the bottom. Then we cut molds for the sides and the roof and glued them together. We pierced the lids and pasted a wooden stick to put it in the straw and glue the other side. Finally, we make a hole in the front and back of the car and pass the tube of the steering where we will later put the balloon. Verify that the car is advancing, and then we begin to take positions and time. With this data, we will extract the rest of the physical magnitudes. We made operations for each of the requiring data. When we already have the tables filled, it is time to answer the request questions, where we will analyze and compare our results. Finally, we made our conclusion as a team, where we added the difficulties that were presented to us and if the established objective was met.
Hi, my name is Mariana, and today I'm going to talk about theoretical framework. Position. Position can be defined as the location of an object at any given time, and displacement is the change in position of an object. Time is change, or the interval over which change occurs. It is impossible to know that time has passed unless something changes. Velocity is the directional speed of an object in motion as an indication of its rate of change in position as observed from a particular frame of reference and measured by a particular standard of time. Acceleration refers to the change in velocity or speed of bodies as they move, taking into account the elapsed time during that speed change. Force, the push or pull on an object with mass causes it to change its velocity. Force is an external agent capable of changing a body's state of rest or motion. Kinetic energy. A form of mechanical energy is the kinetic energy. The kinetic energy is the energy possessed by a body by virtue of its movement. Change in kinetic energy. The change in kinetic energy is the difference between the final amount of kinetic energy and the initial amount of kinetic energy. Momentum. It is called quantity of motion or momentum, the product of mass of a body by its velocity. Impulse is a certain amount of force you apply for a certain amount of time to cause a change in momentum. Change in momentum, when a resultant force acts on an object that is moving or able to move, there is a change in momentum. Thank you.
Okay, in the development we had 2 tables. In the first tables we only put the position and the time. Then in the second table we copy-paste the first information, and we had more physical magnitudes that are velocity, acceleration, force, kinetic energy, change in kinetic energy, momentum, impulse, and change in momentum. So with the position and the time, we can start to solve the other magnitudes. And the velocity is the difference between the position, the final and the initial, divided into the difference from the time, the final and initial. The acceleration is too similar, but is the difference between the velocities and the difference between the times. Then we have the force. The force is the product of the mass multiply the acceleration. And in the kinetic energy is the mass multiply the velocity in the square, and this divided into 2. To the changing kinetic energy, we has do a rest that the first kinetic energy and the second. So these are the changing kinetic energy. Then in the momentum, we had to multiply the mass and the velocity. In the impulse, we multiply the force with the time. And finally, in the change in momentum, we do exactly the same that in the change in kinetic energy. We rest the initial with the final momentum and put the answer, then the same rest the initial with the final and the same.
In this case, we observed that the velocity was not the same during the tour. There was a change in each of the positions in which the car passed. The velocity decreased, and because of this, the car had a negative acceleration, which also means that the force was decreasing in each position. The behavior of the kinetic energy is that it decreased in each position as the velocity decreased too. The car had changes in their kinetic energy. The behavior of the momentum was that it was decreasing. Looking at the impulse and momentum columns, we realized that they were exactly the same data. The energy that moves the car from the inflated balloon, when the balloon is released in the air, the energy makes it move forward. The energy of the car was not conserved. It is spent making the car no longer able to move. About the energy. And the machines involved in the operation in the cart was the wheel, which serves as the tire of the car so that it can move forward.
Now we have the conclusion. Our conclusion as a team was that we believe we have met the established objective since we correctly calculate and with each of its formulas the different physical magnitudes. And we were also able to study the movement of car during the tour. To complete this activity, we had to have correctly developed the skills of this learning unit, since the concepts and formulas to carry out each of the measures were found throughout the course. The biggest difficulty we faced was with the balloons. We used a total of 5 balloons, since every time we use a balloon, it washes down when it is deflated and no longer had the power to move the car for 5 meters. And that's it. That's all the conclusion, and thank you.